new episodes of The View when she tries to pull the race card.
Yes.
And then she's like, America is racist. And then they're like, yeah, they might be racist, but they're not like slave owner racist. like somebody that we...
That's so true.
Yeah.
One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any is she said, well, like, I guess that's just what they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
Have you ever witnessed a debate so fiery, so jaw-dropping, that it left everyone questioning everything they thought they knew about a public figure? Well, that's exactly what happened when Greg Gutfeld utterly demolished Sunny Hostin on live TV. The fallout? Immediate, intense, and it all started with one incredibly uncomfortable truth being dropped. Let's break it down. It all kicked off with an innocuous exchange that seemed like just another day on The View, but Greg Gutfeld wasn't about to let that happen. In an unexpected twist, he took aim at Sunny Hostin, who, known for her sharp rhetoric on race and privilege, had just made a glaring mistake on air. The target? Her understanding, or lack thereof, of science, and not just any science. The Eclipse. Sunny was speaking with her usual confidence, diving into a passionate speech about the solar eclipse, but made the mistake of trying to tie it to climate change, a topic she's frequently outspoken about.
It is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Because if she is shaming descendants of this, will she continue to do that when she is now one of them?
This is where Greg saw an opening. He wasn't going to let her slip through without a challenge. Here's where things really took a turn. Sunny, in typical fashion, made a bold statement connecting climate change to the upcoming solar eclipse. But, well, she was completely off base. In fact, Greg wasted no time in reminding her that the moon, not climate change, was responsible for the eclipse. As if that wasn't enough, he poked fun at the sheer irony of her law degree while struggling with basic science. The audience, they were stunned. Greg's sharp wit and quick comeback caught everyone off guard. As the camera zoomed in, you could almost feel the tension between the two. Sunny, embarrassed but still trying to defend herself, attempted to regain control of the conversation. But Greg wasn't having it, and just when it couldn't get more awkward, Greg dropped the bombshell. He didn't just call out her scientific ignorance, he exposed her hypocrisy in front of millions. See, Sunny had spent years calling out the past, particularly America's history with slavery and systemic racism.
Everyone has ancestors that did unspeakably horrible things. It's just that not everyone's ancestors have records tied to their DNA about it. Worried for Sunny Hostin's progeny in the future that do a DNA test and find out that they were related to a cast member of The View. And they're like, oh, it all makes so much sense now why I'm so stupid and fat.
But what many didn't know is that her own family history wasn't exactly a story of pure innocence. Turns out Sunny's ancestors were slave owners. Greg couldn't resist pointing it out. In that moment, it wasn't just about the eclipse anymore. Greg's comment struck at the heart of the conversation, highlighting the stark contrast between her public, personal, and private lineage. The room went silent. Whoopi Goldberg looked stunned. Even Joy Behar, usually a staunch defender of Sunny, looked visibly uncomfortable. But the damage had already been done. For the first time in what felt like ages, Sunny was speechless. The woman who had built her platform on holding others accountable for their historical sins was suddenly faced with an uncomfortable truth about her own. The audience? A mix of disbelief and curiosity. Some were shocked by the sudden turn of events, while others were waiting for Sunny to respond. But all eyes were on her, and the weight of her silence was deafening.
Yes, there's nothing worse than to find out you're a white woman.
She's so disappointed.
It's really disappointing.
Her mother was white.
Oh my God.
Shame.
Oh my God.
The horror. History, and finds out that this is fantastic. She is descended from slaveholders. She's descended from slaveholders, and she's been apparently getting a lot of mail about her call for reparations because it turns out she's going to be paying them and not actually receiving them.
Internet? It went wild. Memes flooded Twitter and TikTok, and the public wasn't about to let her off the hook anytime soon. One viral tweet after another ripped apart her credibility, questioning her authority on issues of race and privilege. Of course, ABC executives were panicking. As the clip went viral, major sponsors began pulling away. Advertisers didn't want to be associated with the chaos surrounding The View, and ratings were already in decline. This latest scandal? It was the final nail in the coffin. Inside sources started whispering about what would happen next. Was The View on its way out? Was it time for Sunny Hostin to step down? The network tried to get ahead of the story, issuing carefully worded statements in an attempt to quell the growing public outcry. But the damage was done. Behind the scenes, it became clear that the controversy surrounding The View wasn't going away. Executives were having internal meetings, discussing potential ways to salvage the show and restore its reputation. Some even floated the idea of a refresh, replacing some of the more divisive hosts. But Sunny? She was caught in the crossfire, but the situation didn't end there. No, it only got more complicated. Behind closed doors, ABC was reportedly scrambling to find a way out of the mess. They knew the controversy wasn't going anywhere. If anything, it was just heating up. Would the network take drastic action? Perhaps replace The View with something fresher, something less toxic? Would they let this controversy snowball out of control? The fallout didn't just impact the show, it spread to the personal lives of the hosts. Whoopi Goldberg, though mostly unaffected by the scandal, found herself pulled into the drama as well. Her credibility was being questioned by fans and critics who wondered why she didn't intervene during the exchange.
Average out The View hosts, among the dumbest people on television.
Sunny's dumb. Certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked and you went on stage with it and it's nothing.
Just
there.
go for it. Yeah,
there's nothing.
Could this be the beginning of the end for The View? Now, let's talk about irony for a moment. Here was Sunny Hostin, an outspoken advocate for reparations, pushing for justice and accountability for America's past sins. But suddenly, she was faced with her own uncomfortable truth. The law degree that should have made her a beacon of intellectual integrity couldn't save her from the harsh reality that her own ancestors were complicit in slavery. Greg, with perfect timing, pointed out how hypocritical it was for someone so deeply involved in identity politics to be blindsided by her own genealogy. And let's not forget the irony of it all. Sunny had built her career on holding others accountable for their historical sins and her sharp criticism of American institutions. Now, with the revelation about her family's history, it was her own credibility that was on the line. As the social media reactions poured in, the world couldn't help but speculate. Was this the end for The View? Would Sunny ever be able to recover from this public humiliation? More importantly, would she change her stance on racial justice now that the uncomfortable truth about her own ancestry was out in the open? But the biggest question of all, was this the beginning of a new era for daytime talk shows? If The View could be shaken to its core by a single conversation, was it possible that the entire talk show genre was ready for a major shakeup? These questions lingered as viewers and critics eagerly awaited what would happen next. With each passing day, the scandal grew larger. It was no longer just about the hosts. It was about what The View stood for and whether it could survive the pressure. And let's not underestimate the power of the public's reaction. The media was quick to fan the flames, and for every celebrity or public figure who came to Sunny's defense, there were a dozen more who took Greg's side. Conservative pundits on social media celebrated the takedown, while progressive voices struggled to defend Sunny without drawing attention to her family's history. The online debate became a battleground, with people from all walks of life weighing in on everything from cancel culture to the concept of inherited guilt. For the first time, The View was not just a place for political debate. It had become the focal point of a much larger cultural war. And neither Greg Gutfeld nor Sunny Hostin were going to escape the consequences. As the dust settled, the burning question remained. What would happen next? Was this the end of The View as we knew it? And would Sunny Hostin's career survive the public backlash? The network's decisions over the next few months would be crucial. Would they take a stand and side with their hosts, or would they distance themselves, moving on to something new? Could Sunny rise above the scandal, or was this a turning point from which she could never fully recover? Only time would tell. But for now, one thing was certain. This scandal had changed the face of daytime television forever. As the public reaction rages on, the executives at ABC find themselves in crisis mode. Inside their glass-walled boardrooms, meetings are held. Behind closed doors, each one more tense than the last. The pressure to fix the damage is palpable. The View had long been an iconic staple of daytime television, but now the brand was in jeopardy. Viewership was plummeting. The hashtag #JockerSunnygate was trending across Twitter, and the advertisers were pulling their support. The corporate world, always mindful of PR disasters, wasn't ready to take the hit. Executives began weighing their options. Should they stand by their hosts and continue to fuel the fire, potentially turning The View into a political battleground? Or was it time for a change? Some began to push for a refresh of the cast, some new faces, perhaps a rebranding of the show to distance itself from the controversy. Meanwhile, others were questioning if the network would risk losing The View entirely, replacing it with something new, more in line with modern expectations of entertainment and intellectual discourse. For the first time in years, the future of daytime television felt up for grabs. For Sunny Hostin, the fallout wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. The cameras had stopped rolling, but the impact of Greg's words lingered. How could she defend herself? How could she explain that, despite everything, she believed in the very principles she preached? She retreated to her dressing room after the taping, her emotions spilling out.
The lawsuit, it's about the truth behind the personas that the public puts.
I don't understand how you say you love your country at the same time as you normalize this convicted felon, which I can.
Behind closed doors, she broke down in front of her closest allies, including Whoopi and Joy. For the first time, Sunny acknowledged how difficult it had been to carry the weight of her public persona. Being the voice for racial justice, fighting for marginalized communities, meant she had to be perfect, always articulate, always ready for battle. But in this moment, she didn't feel like a warrior. She felt exposed. The revelation of her family's history was like a wound she'd tried to ignore, but now it was there for the whole world to see. How could she continue advocating for reparations, for historical accountability, knowing her own family's role in perpetuating slavery? Was this hypocrisy, or was it just another messy part of the human story? The voices in her head were loud, and the pressure was mounting. Could she bounce back from this? Meanwhile, on social media, the outrage continued to grow. Every hour, new stories and perspectives emerged, many calling for Sunny to step down or be removed from the show. The hashtag #cancel Sunny Hostin was everywhere, and it wasn't just coming from conservatives. Many liberals were also questioning her integrity. How could she preach about racial justice with this dark stain in her family history? The meme war was in full swing. Memes ridiculing Sunny's blunder circulated like wildfire, while others were quick to point out how Greg's attack was masterfully timed and ruthlessly executed. Gutfeld for president, some joked. Others asked, was the eclipse really the moment that unraveled her entire career? It was a question no one had the answer to, but the sheer volume of commentary made it impossible for ABC to ignore. For Greg Gutfeld, this moment was a career-defining one. His appearance on The View, a show typically known for its left-leaning hosts, had solidified his reputation as a conservative provocateur. But the aftermath of his takedown of Sunny wasn't just about him winning the battle. It was about him positioning himself as a voice of reason in a world where political correctness and social justice had begun to consume everything. The memeification of his victory was everywhere. Clips of his sharp remarks circulated. People, who were once skeptical of his brash, sometimes divisive humor, were now singing his praises. It was as if he had unlocked a cultural moment, a perfect storm of political discontent, where he came out on top. He was no longer just a late-night host. He was a symbol of the growing resistance to woke culture. And now the question had to be asked. Was this the beginning of Greg's rise to even more powerful platforms? Could he leverage this viral moment to push for his own daytime talk show or a higher profile in the world of politics? Back at ABC, the tension continued to build. Every meeting in the executive suite felt like a ticking time bomb. Should they cancel The View entirely? The idea of axing a long-running show with such a rich history seemed drastic, but it was clear that something needed to be done. Ratings had dipped dramatically, and advertisers were getting nervous. Or should they replace certain hosts and retool the show? Bring in new voices to balance out the ideological battles that had dominated the show for the past decade? The conversation shifted from how to fix the damage to whether the show could even be salvaged. Rumors spread that ABC was in talks with major stars, possible replacements for Sunny, or even a new direction for the show entirely. Could they create a View 2.0 that would bring audiences back? The executives knew that change was inevitable. Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg found herself torn. As the seasoned veteran of the panel, she had long been the glue that held the show together. She knew how to navigate these turbulent waters. But now, with all eyes on her and the others, she was starting to feel the weight of the controversy herself. Her decision not to intervene during the confrontation with Greg left many viewers questioning her loyalty to Sunny. Should she have stepped in, defended her co-host? Or had her silence been the strategic choice, giving Sunny the space to handle her own fight? Behind the scenes, Whoopi's own role in the future of The View was becoming unclear. Was her time on the show coming to a close as the network looked to bring in fresh perspectives? Whoopi had always been the wise voice of reason, but the show was evolving in ways she hadn't expected. What was her place in this new world? For Sunny, the public scrutiny was intense, but the private toll was even more harrowing. Her phone rang nonstop, filled with text messages from family, friends, and colleagues, each one with advice, criticism, or an attempt at comfort. The messages ranged from, "We stand with you," to, "You need to step down." One message from her mother, which she had a difficult time reading, simply said, "Do you think I don't know the truth of our family? I've carried this burden my entire life, and now you'll have to as well. Be brave." Sunny was forced to confront her family's past in ways she hadn't planned. The anger she had spent her career directing at others now turned inward. Her heritage, her identity. Could she separate the two? Was it even fair to demand justice from others when her own bloodline had participated in that same injustice? The question that lingered over the entire fallout was, could Sunny be redeemed? Could the public forgive her for this perceived hypocrisy, or would her past always come back to haunt her? Some speculated that she could use this moment to grow, publicly acknowledge her family's history, and even become a stronger advocate for racial reconciliation. But would the public buy it? Was it possible for her to reclaim her position, or had this been her undoing? The showdown between Greg and Sunny was far from over. What began as a moment of on-air banter had escalated into something far more complex. It had exposed deep societal issues, race, privilege, hypocrisy, and it had forced everyone involved to reckon with their own narratives. What came next would determine not just the future of The View, but the future of the culture wars in America. Would Sunny stand tall again? Could The View reclaim its place in the hearts of viewers? Or was the damage irreparable, a wound too deep to heal? As the dust begins to settle, the future of The View is uncertain, but one thing is clear. This incident has left an indelible mark. What we saw on that fateful day was more than just a clash of personalities. It was a moment of reckoning for both The View and the broader political discourse in America. Sunny Hostin's next move could either redefine her career or seal its fate. And as for Greg Gutfeld, this might just be the beginning of his rise to something much bigger. The stage is set. The world is watching. And the question remains, will Sunny rise from the ashes, or will she be consumed by the fire?